A month after my wife's memorial service, the harbor master called me close to 9 at night and lowered his voice on the phone. Come by the office tomorrow alone. We've got some papers in your name, connected to your son-in-law. If that signature isn't yours, this could turn into a criminal case. I was sitting in the old wooden chair by the window, eyes pointed out at the bay like every other evening. The wind off the water was salty and cold, seeping through my sweater and down into my bad knees. My wooden dock stuck out past the rocks toward a row of little fishing boats rocking under the yellow harbor lights. Linda's wind chime, the one she hung when she was still alive, still tinkled softly, like someone lightly tapping my memories. My name is Henry. I'm 69, retired after more than 40 years fixing engines on fishing boats around this bay. My house sits on a small strip of land in Maine, pine woods behind, deep gray-green water in front. My proudest possession isn't my beat-up pickup or whatever's in my bank account. It's the dock Linda and I built with our own hands, plank by plank, bolt by bolt. We must have sat there and watched the sunset more times than I can count. And it was right there at the end of that dock where I scattered part of her ashes. That night my old phone buzzed, the screen glowing white in the dark room. I figured it was a wrong number or someone from church asking about my blood pressure, but the name on the screen said Bill, Harbor Office. Bill has been harbor master here for over 20 years. He's not the type who calls just to shoot the breeze. His voice was low and serious. Can you swing by the office tomorrow, Henry? We got a few event permits for your dock, all in your name with your signature. But the emails sound nothing like you. And your son-in-law's name is all over the file. I think you need to see it yourself. Don't say anything to them yet, okay? I could hear his pencil tapping against his desk on the other end of the line, that little habit of his whenever he's tense. My chest sank in that strange way, heavy and hollow at the same time. I couldn't remember signing anything at the harbor office. The last time I'd been there in person was years ago, to renew my registration for the little wooden boat, right after Linda died. I'll come in, I said. Bill, what do you mean, connected to my son-in-law? He sighed, and I could tell he was choosing his words. Well, the paperwork says you've authorized his events company to use your dock as an event space. There's a wire order and emails that make it sound like you're thrilled about it. If that's really you, I got no say. If it's not, that signature's a big problem. We'll talk in person, Henry. Try to get some rest tonight. I didn't sleep much at all. I sat at the kitchen table with only the little light over the sink turned on, that soft yellow spilling across the dark wood. The cup of tea in my hand went cold. The steam faded away in the chilly air. On the fridge, there's still a scrap of paper with Linda's handwriting from years ago. Don't forget milk and cookies for Emma. Love you, L. I've left that note there since the day she died, like a tiny anchor holding my memory in place as it gets old and patchy. Emma is our only child. She left this little town at 18, went to school in Boston, then stayed there to work, date, get married. Her husband, Tyler, the first time he came up to visit, he said at dinner that this place had insane potential for experiential tourism, and that my dock was the perfect backdrop for engagements, elopements, sunset packages. I remember laughing, thinking it was just marketing talk from a younger man whose mouth was always full of words like brand, optics, monetize. I told him, this dock is not a stage. It's where your mother and I sat listening to the waves and arguing about whether to send you to summer camp or buy that piano. Tyler just grinned. I get it, Dad. I'm just talking hypothetically. But hey, one day it could help you bring in some extra income so you don't have to worry about medical bills. Back then, I was still getting used to Linda being gone. The day they shut her ventilator off, I felt like the hospital room itself sank 3 inches. When I came home, everything from her coat behind the door to her old dish towel in the kitchen made my throat close up. Emma was scared I'd fade away living alone, so she called almost every night, asking what I ate, if I took my meds, if I slept. Tyler talked more about helping with my finances. You shouldn't be driving yourself in winter, he'd say. You shouldn't be worrying about online banking or due dates. Let us handle the paperwork. Just sign a few forms, Dad, for convenience. One night, he brought it over a stack of documents printed on a little portable printer he dragged in from the car. He spread them across the kitchen table and put a pen in front of me. "These are just forms for the bank and some utilities so I can set up autopay for you," he said. "All technical stuff. You don't have to think about it. Sign here, and here, and here." So I signed. My eyes were bad, and my insides were empty. Linda had been gone less than 3 months. I just wanted to stop thinking about bills, due dates, tiny lines of text on a computer screen. Emma stood beside me, her hand resting on my shoulder. "Dad, this will give you more time to sit on the dock and relax," she said. Back then, more time on the dock sounded comforting. I didn't realize that less than a year later, that same dock would be showing up in some file Bill wanted me to see, with a signature that looked exactly like mine, being used for something Linda never would have accepted, turning the place where I scattered her ashes into an event space under my son-in-law's company. I sat there listening to the wind chime tap softly against itself and kept wondering, if this is all just a misunderstanding, why did Bill call me at 9 at night and tell me not to tell my daughter? And if it's not, how many things have I signed since Linda died that I never truly understood? The next morning I got up earlier than usual. Not because I slept well, I didn't, but because sleep never really settled in. Maine mornings are late and gray, especially in the cold months. When I flipped on the kitchen light, outside was still that blue-green half-dark, just a strip of pale silver on the water showing where the day would start. I made a pot of weak coffee, same as I used to before work at the shop. Strong coffee makes my heart pound. The doctor says that's a bad idea. I stood by the sink and looked through the small window toward the dock. The planks were wet with dew. The bay lay flat and heavy. A couple seagulls huddled together on a piling like they were plotting something. Linda's wind chime swayed just enough to ring once in a while. Short, delicate little notes. Around 8, I shrugged into my heavy coat, pulled on my knit cap, slipped a few old bank letters into the inside pocket, and drove my pickup into town. The road to the harbor office isn't long, but every curve reminded me of driving Linda to the grocery store, the doctor, the diner. People say when you're old, memories are like waves. They just keep hitting the same rock over and over. I think that's true. Bill was waiting outside the office door, holding a paper cup of coffee, wearing that navy coat with the faded harbor office logo on it. When he saw me, he lifted his hand. "Henry, come on in. Wind's nasty today." The office was small, walls lined with a big chart of the bay and photos of boats over the years. On his desk was a stack of printed pages and a USB stick plugged into his computer. He shut the door, pulled the glass panel tight to cut the draft, and motioned for me to sit in the old swivel chair across from him. "First off, I want you to know I'm not here to start trouble for your family," Bill said, voice low. "I've worked this harbor 20 years. I knew you and Linda. Saw Emma running around this dock in diapers. So when I saw this stuff," he tapped the papers, "I couldn't just pretend I hadn't." He slid the stack closer to me. "I printed a few things so they're easier to read. Got the emails on here too," he said, pointing at the USB. "We'll look at those in a minute." The first page was an application for an outdoor event permit on a private dock. Under property owner, there was my full name, my address, my phone number. All correct. At the bottom, a signature that looked disturbingly like mine. I squinted, leaned closer. My heart was beating slow, but heavy. The slant, how the H in Henry hooked just a hair too far to the right. That was all me. But I knew, as sure as I knew my own face, that I had never sat in this office and signed that form. "This is the first application," Bill said. 2 more came in after. Seasonal events. Everything was sent as scanned PDFs by email. Staff sees your signature. Fee paid. They hit approve standard process. I turned to the next page. Printouts of email threads. Bill tapped 1. "This is the email address listed as yours. Henry.com, off dock at some weird domain. But I know your email from your boat registration paperwork. All these years, it's a different one. Read the tone here." I read, "Hi, Bill. That sounds fantastic. I'm really excited to see my old dock finally making some money. Go ahead and process everything for Harbor Lights Events LLC. My son-in-law Tyler will handle the details. I trust him completely. Best, Henry." I stopped at the word fantastic. I've never used that word in an email in my life, And I don't sign with Best Henry. I sign Thanks H. Collins, or just Henry. I didn't write this email, I said, trying to keep my voice steady. That's what I figured. Bill nodded. There's more. He pulled out another printout, a wire transfer order. This is a copy of the wiring order the city's finance office sends us along with the file to prove fees were paid, he said. The sending account's in your name. It's going to Harbor Lights Events LLC. Memo says pier renovation and liability coverage. My throat went dry. Renovation. Liability coverage. I'd heard those words out of Tyler's mouth more than once. I don't even know. I started, then stopped. Maybe that's one of those accounts he told me he needed to set up autopay and take the pressure off me. Bill gave me that look. Half sympathy, half concern. Henry, I'm not a lawyer, but I've seen a few older folks get taken advantage of, especially when there's waterfront property involved. Yesterday, when I checked the dock's insurance file, I saw a new policy in your name, and some of the language in it. It did not sit right with me. He turned the computer screen toward me and opened a PDF of the insurance policy. Take a look at this section. I leaned in and read. In case the primary owner becomes incapacitated, mentally incompetent, or suffers a fatal accident on the insured property, temporary management and decision-making regarding the insured dock and related structures will be transferred to Harbor Lights Events LLC, managed by Tyler, my son-in-law's last name, until a court or designated trustee decides otherwise. My hands started to tremble. The phrase fatal accident on the insured property felt like a nail driven straight into my chest. I never signed anything that said if I collapse or have an accident, someone else gets to run my dock, I said slowly, each word scraping out of my throat. Bill nodded. I believe you. Which means the signature on this policy is suspicious at best. We're not the cops, but if you choose to pursue this, I can testify the documents came from an email address that isn't your original, and that the signature was submitted as a scanned image, not signed in person. He paused, then added quietly, I called you last night because I remember Linda. Every time she saw me, she'd say, Bill, if anything weird ever happens with our dock, you tell Henry right away. That's the place we keep what's left of our good days. I figure, if she were still here, she'd want me to be straight with you. My chest tightened hearing Linda's name in that little room. Thank you, Bill, I managed. Can you give me copies of all this? I need to look it over, and I probably need a lawyer. Bill nodded, pulled out the USB and handed it to me. It's all on there. Emails, forms, wire orders, insurance policy. I printed a full set too in case you're more comfortable on paper. As for a lawyer, Henry, I think that's something you should do sooner rather than later. And in the meantime, if Tyler or anyone else comes sniffing around asking about permits, I'll say the office is reviewing procedures. The little USB felt heavier than it should in my hand, like it held not just PDFs, but a large question. Since Linda died, how much of my life had I signed away without ever truly reading the fine print? On the way home, I didn't go straight back to the house. I pulled into the parking lot of the small bank downtown instead. The automatic doors slid open and warm air, with a faint perfume smell, washed over me. I felt out of place among younger folks in nice coats, checking their phones and talking about apps and online features like they were talking about breathing. I went straight to the customer service desk. A young woman with her hair tied back, Rachel, on her name tag, smiled. How can I help you today, sir? I need to see every account with my name on it, I said. And any documents with my signature for the last, 2 years. She looked a little surprised, but kept her professional tone. Of course. Could I please see your ID? And if you'd like, we can use a private room since this involves personal financial information. Private room, I said, feeling my throat go dry again. In the small glassed-in office, Rachel pulled up my profile and typed in a few things. Okay, I show you have one older checking account, a savings account, and a joint account opened about 1.5 years ago, she said. There are also some documents regarding a power of attorney in favor of your daughter, Emma. The words power of attorney were like someone dumping a bucket of ice water over my head. Let me see that, I said. She printed a few pages, clipped them together, and slid them across the table. At the top was the bank logo and the title. Durable Power of Attorney for Finances. Principal, my name. Agent, Emma Collins. Whatever her current last name is. My daughter. The signature line looked like mine. Or close enough. A bank employee's initials appeared beside a notary statement. Was I physically here when this was signed? I asked. Rachel checked the screen. According to our system, this form was received electronically and signed through our e-signature process, she said. There's a note that phone verification was completed. The staff member who handled it has since transferred to another branch. I don't remember anyone explaining what this meant, I muttered. Can you tell me, in plain English, what my daughter can do with this? Rachel studied me for a second, then spoke gently. Basically, this gives your daughter the authority to handle financial transactions on your behalf if you're incapacitated. But in practice, many institutions will honor it whenever the agent presents it. I see here she used it to set up auto payments, open the joint account, and authorize regular transfers to a business account for Harbor Lights Events LLC, with the memo, Care and Maintenance for Dad's Property. Care and maintenance, I repeated, tasting the sourness of cold coffee in my mouth. How much has been transferred so far? She scrolled and counted. Within the last year, the total looks to be about $38,000, spread over multiple smaller transfers. $38,000. For a man who's lived frugally his whole life, that's a big number. That's heating oil, medications, roof repairs. I sat back in my chair and stared at the POA paperwork. Rachel, I asked slowly. If that signature on there wasn't something I sat down and signed myself, but a scanned copy pasted on, what would the bank do? She bit her lip. I can't give legal advice, sir, she said. But if you suspect your signature was misused, you really should speak with an attorney. From the bank's side, if we're notified of suspected fraud, we can freeze certain transactions and flag the accounts for investigation as needed. $38,000. For a man who's lived frugally his whole life, that's a big number. That's heating oil, medications, roof repairs. I sat back in my chair and stared at the POA paperwork. Rachel, I asked slowly. If that signature on there wasn't something I sat down and signed myself, but a scanned copy pasted on, what would the bank do? She bit her lip. I can't give legal advice, sir, she said. But if you suspect your signature was misused, you really should speak with an attorney. From the bank's side, if we're notified of suspected fraud, we can freeze certain transactions and flag the accounts for investigation as needed. I nodded and thanked her. When I walked out of the bank with those pages in my hand, my fingers were clenched so tightly the knuckles had gone white. The wind outside was sharper now, bringing the cold straight in off the bay. I felt like I was standing between two worlds. One of paper and ink, where you sign in front of a person looking you in the eye, and one of emails and scans and click to sign, where someone who has your password and a JPEG of your signature can reroute your entire life without you ever walking into a building. I didn't call Emma that day. Instead, I went home, spread all the documents out on the dining table, turned up the overhead light, poured myself another cup of hot tea, and called Tom, a longtime friend, who also happens to be an elder law attorney in the next town over. Tom's not a chatty guy. He's the kind who looks you straight in the eyes and lets you talk until you run dry. When I told him I suspected somebody had been using my signature for things I never agreed to, he just said, "You free this afternoon? Bring everything. Bring the USB too. And Henry, don't mention this to Emma or Tyler until we know what we're dealing with." By the time I drove to his office that afternoon, the sky was low and gray. His office is an old house converted into a law practice. Walls full of certificates and photos of him standing with groups of gray-haired people after elder rights workshops. Tom waited for me in a small conference room. I set the USB, insurance printouts, email copies, POA, wire orders, everything on the table. He put on his glasses, opened his laptop, and started going through each file, one by one, without saying a thing for a long time. The wall clock ticked steadily. The only other sound was the rustling of paper as he turned pages. Finally, he looked up. "How do you want me to put this, Henry?" he asked. "If I say it plain, you're the classic victim of elder financial abuse. Are you going to fall out of your chair?" I let out a long breath, like air leaking out of an old tire. I don't know if I've got the energy left to be shocked, I said. Since last night, all I've been seeing is this. I got old when I wasn't looking, and that empty space I left, someone rushed to fill with paperwork and a forged signature. Tom nodded, fingers steepled. There are some pretty clear markers, he said. First, the emails from you are being sent from the IP address of the co-working office Tyler uses in Boston. I can see that in the metadata. Second, the signatures on these forms are scanned images, not originals. I zoomed in. Every swoop, every ink blot is identical across documents. That's copy and paste. Third, the doc's insurance policy has that clause transferring temporary control to Tyler's LLC if you're incapacitated or die in an accident on your own property. At the same time, your accounts have been quietly sending regular transfers to that LLC labeled as care and maintenance. He met my eyes. I'm not saying this is a murder plot, he said. But from a legal standpoint, just the forgery and the way the POA was used without informed consent is a serious problem. If you want, we can approach this two ways. 1, try to clean it up within the family. Revoke, retitle, lock things down. Or 2, treat it as a criminal matter and bring in law enforcement for an elder abuse investigation. I stared at my hands. The knuckles are knobby and scarred. My nails are rough. Linda used to say my hands looked like tree roots. Ugly, but warm. I'm not ready to put my daughter in a police report, I said quietly. But I am ready to do whatever it takes so no one can lay a finger on Linda's dock if I slip into the water someday. Tom nodded. Then the most direct path is this, he said. We set up an irrevocable trust and transfer the house and dock into it. You pick a trustee you trust, someone who isn't Emma and isn't Tyler. We revoke all old POAs and write a new limited one, if you need one at all. And we work with the bank and harbor office to flag suspected fraud and freeze any further funny business involving that LLC. Can I do that without dragging Emma into court? I asked. You can, he said, but you have to accept a trade-off. Once you put firm legal boundaries in place, your daughter may be hurt, angry, say you don't trust family, maybe even cut contact for a while. So you've got to ask, what's scarier? Losing your dock and Linda's memories, or letting go of this picture you keep in your head of a grateful daughter while she lets her husband use your name like a financial stamp? I closed my eyes for a moment. In my mind, I saw Linda sitting at the edge of the dock holding a mug of tea, watching the water change colors. She used to say, I don't need much, just somewhere to sit at the end of the day and feel like we haven't lost ourselves. She's gone now, but the place to sit is still here, and I have to decide who it belongs to. Do it, I said, opening my eyes. Set up the trust. Kill the POA. Prepare whatever needs preparing. If a storm comes after that, I'll stand on the dock and take it. But I can't stand by and watch them pound posts into that dock and hang string lights to sell tickets. Tom gave a small, tired smile, the kind lawyers give when they've heard too many late, but still timely change-of-heart speeches. Okay, he said. I'll need you to sign some papers, but this time I'm going to read every line out loud to you. We're not skipping a single word. It took almost 2 weeks to get everything rolling. The trust drafted and filed, notices sent, the bank told to revoke the old POA and restrict certain accounts. A new checking account was opened just for my pension. The old accounts were locked down, so no more money could trickle out to Harbor Lights Events LLC. Tom told me not to rush into a confrontation yet. Let the paperwork do its work first. During those 2 weeks, Emma still called now and then, her voice busy and hurried. Dad, you okay? Don't forget your meds. It's really cold this month. Your heating bill will be a little higher, but I already set up autopay so you don't have to stress. I listened and thought how strange it was, hearing her talk about bills she no longer had access to. If the bank had blocked her, she must have felt the shift. But she didn't mention it. Tyler didn't call at all. Then one Saturday afternoon, with the sun just starting to slip behind the pines, Tyler showed up in my doorway with a bottle of wine in his hand and a big smile. Hey, Dad. I was in the area meeting a client. Thought I'd swing by and check on you. I leaned against the doorframe and didn't open it as wide as I usually did. What client needs you out in a town this small? I asked. Oh, couples looking to book a sunset experience, he said casually. Anyway, can I come in? He threw out that phrase like it was nothing, sunset experience, but I heard every syllable. I thought about that insurance clause, those emails, the promo photos he'd once shown me. I'm busy, I said, trying to keep my tone even. But come on in. We need to talk. We sat at the dining table. Tyler set the wine bottle down and glanced around the house. His eyes lingered on the wedding photo of Linda and me, and then on the note with her handwriting on the fridge. I've always loved the vibe here, he said. Real, authentic coastal living. That's what my clients want. Not some fake resort. They want something old, a little rough around the edges, but with soul. You get that, right? I get it, I said. Old, rough with soul. Sounds about right for us old folks. He laughed, thinking I was making a joke. Exactly. So anyway, I wanted to give you a quick update on the dock project. I raised my hand and stopped him. You don't need to update me, I said. I've already been updated by somebody else. He blinked. What's that supposed to mean? I mean, I just came back from the harbor office last week, I said. And the bank. I've read the emails I supposedly sent. I've seen the contracts I signed. I've looked at the wires I supposedly authorized. Funny thing is, I don't remember ever sitting in front of a computer and typing the words fantastic and I'm really excited once in my life. The smile on Tyler's face dimmed like someone turned down a light. Are you referring to something specific? He asked quietly. I'm referring to someone using my signature, or a scanned copy of it, to file for permits, wire money into your LLC, and buy an insurance policy that says if I collapse or die in an accident on my own dock, you temporarily get to run it, I said. He sucked in a breath, started to say something, then shifted gears. I think there's a misunderstanding here, he said. This was a standard family arrangement, helping you protect and monetize your assets and plan for the future. I explained this all to Emma, and she said you agreed. You just don't remember the details. The way he said Emma, my daughter's name, like a shield made my teeth clench. You might be able to convince Emma I don't remember, I told him. But Bill doesn't buy it. The girl at the bank doesn't buy it. And my lawyer sure as hell doesn't buy it. Your lawyer? Tyler repeated, his eyes narrowing. Yeah, I said. I had a friend take a look. We set up a trust. The house and dock now belong to an irrevocable trust. The trustees are my brother and my lawyer. Not Emma, not you. The old POA is gone. The new one does not have your names on it. The bank has limited what can go out of my accounts. And Bill is prepping a file for the harbor board meeting next week. Tyler stared for a few seconds, then let out a short, dry laugh with no warmth in it. You really think the harbor board cares about family drama? He said. They care about paperwork, permits, paid fees. I've got all of that. Right, I nodded. Up until the part where someone shows them that the signatures are copy-pasted, the emails are fake, and the insurance has some awfully odd language for an old man who just wants to fish off his dock. His jaw tightened. Emma is going to be devastated when she finds out you ran to a lawyer and a bunch of strangers before you talked to her, he said. Emma's going to be devastated about a lot of things, Tyler, I said, feeling something inside me sag. Including the fact she let her husband use her father's name like a tool. But that's a conversation between me and her, not you. His chair scraped hard as he shot to his feet. You wouldn't dare take this public, he said. You'll just make yourself look like some paranoid old man who doesn't understand the legal stuff, and you will lose your only daughter. I might have lost her a long time ago, I said quietly, staring out at the dock through the window. Maybe I lost her the day she started caring more about brand and opportunity than that little wind chime her mother hung. Tyler didn't answer. He grabbed the wine bottle, still unopened, and tossed it into the trash can by the counter. The glass thumped against the plastic with a harsh clatter. Then he went straight out the door and slammed it hard enough that the frame rattled. For a moment the house went back to being quiet. Except it wasn't the easy, comfortable quiet I used to know. It was the silence right before a storm hits. The harbor board meeting was on a Thursday afternoon. The wooden benches in the room were fuller than I'd seen them in years. Dock permits don't usually draw a crowd, But in a small town, news travels fast. I sat in the second row with Tom next to me. Bill was up front shuffling papers. In the back of the room, I saw Emma and Tyler come in. Emma wore a beige sweater coat, her eyes puffy like she'd been crying. Tyler's face was tight, white shirt, tie a little loose. The board went through the usual stuff first. Reports, boat counts, routine approvals. Then the chair turned to Bill. "Bill, you said you had a special item?" "Yes, sir," Bill said. "I'd like to bring to the board's attention some concerns regarding the use of a private dock at my address." I could feel eyes flick toward me and then away again. "About 3 months ago," Bill began, "this office received 3 applications to host commercial events on that dock, listing Mr. Henry Collins as the owner and applicant. The paperwork looked complete, fees paid, so permits were approved. Recently, however, information has come to light that calls into question whether Mr. Collins actually authorized these applications or understood that his dock was being used as a commercial event space." He put the documents under the projector and the signatures lit up large on the wall. "This is the signature on the applications," he said. "And this is Mr. Collins' signature from a boat registration form he signed in person at this office 2 years ago. As you can see, they are identical down to a small ink blot. That suggests this is a scanned image reused across multiple documents, not a fresh signature." A low murmur ran through the room. Emma stared at the floor, hands clenched. Tyler stared straight ahead, jaw set. Bill flipped to the printed email. "This is an email purporting to be from Mr. Collins," he said. "It authorizes Harbor Lights Events LLC, managed by his son-in-law Tyler, to handle all bookings and payments for events on the dock. Technical analysis shows it was sent from an IP address belonging to a co-working space in Boston, not from Mr. Collins's home. The tone and word choice don't match prior written communication from Mr. Collins either." Tom stood and introduced himself as my lawyer, asking permission to address the board. "Ladies and gentlemen," he said calmly, "we're not here to argue about whether anyone likes or dislikes the idea of events on a private dock. We're here because of something more serious. The very real possibility that an elderly resident's signature and financial authority were used without his informed consent. That puts not only Mr. Collins at risk, but potentially this harbor as well, if an accident were to occur on a property being used commercially without the true owner's understanding." He put the insurance policy up on the screen and zoomed in on the clause about transferring temporary dock control to Tyler's LLC if I became incapacitated or died on the property. A few people couldn't help exclaiming softly. Tyler jumped to his feet. "This is character assassination," he said. "I was trying to help my father-in-law generate extra income, make sure his insurance was in order, and prepare for worst-case scenarios. He signed everything. He just doesn't remember. Everyone knows older folks can be forgetful." The murmurs weren't so soft anymore. A dock owner in the back leaned toward his wife and muttered, just loud enough for a few people to hear. "Funny how forgetful he is, but his signature copy-pastes perfectly every time." Tom stepped aside so I could stand. My knees trembled a bit, but my voice surprised me. It was clearer than I expected. "You all know me," I started. "I've lived in this town my whole life. Fixed more of your engines than I can count. I'm no genius, but I can read, I can write, I can sign my own name. And I know the difference between signing something in full understanding and being told, 'It's just some small forms, sign quick and we'll take care of everything.'" I turned to Emma. She wouldn't look up. "After my wife, Linda, died, I was lost," I said. "I let my daughter and son-in-law help with the paperwork, because I thought that was what family care looked like. I didn't think I'd one day be standing here explaining to a harbor board that I never agreed to turn the dock where I scattered my wife's ashes into a stage for someone's promo videos." I faced the board again. "I'm not standing here calling my son-in-law a murderer," I said plainly. "But I am telling you I don't trust him to know where the line is between property and memory, and when a man like that has your paperwork, your signature, and your insurance policy in his hands, the risk isn't just losing a few $1,000s. The risk is that someday I slip on that dock, and people say, 'Good thing the insurance and LLC are all set up so business can go on.'" Silence. You could have heard the wind outside. Finally, the chair cleared his throat. "Mr. Collins, we're very sorry you're going through this," he said. As far as this board is concerned, we'll take the following actions. 1. We're immediately revoking any active permits authorizing commercial events on your dock. 2. We'll file a report with the town noting suspected forgery and potential elder abuse, to be forwarded to the appropriate authorities. 3. From now on, any document regarding your dock will only be accepted if signed in person by you in front of harbor staff, or by a trustee you've officially designated. Bill added solidly. And as harbor master, I won't be approving any Harbor Lights Events LLC activities anywhere in the harbor until this is resolved. Color rose in Tyler's face. He turned to Emma. You see what he's doing? He hissed. He's letting outsiders tear our family apart over a few misunderstandings. Emma burst into tears and bolted from the room. I only caught a glimpse of her back, small under the harsh hallway lighting. I've never wanted to make my daughter cry. But some tears either get cried now, or they come later, heavier. The meeting wrapped up. People shook my hand and patted my shoulder, saying things like, "You did the right thing," and "Somebody had to stand up." But by the time I stepped out onto the front steps of the building and looked toward the far line of the bay, I just felt tired. A light, cold rain had started, the drops slanting sideways in the wind like the spray you get when waves smack into the dock pilings. The days after that were quiet in a different way. My phone stopped buzzing with Emma's nightly texts. "Sleep well, Dad. Did you eat?" Sometimes my brother Nick called to check in. He'd tell me Tom had finished this or filed that the trust was in place and to relax. "I don't know if the kids will ever understand," Nick said once, "but you did what Linda would have wanted you to do. She'd never have let that dock turn into a ticket booth." I started walking down to the dock more often, partly because I needed sea air to clear my head, partly because I wanted to keep watch. The little camera the neighbor kid installed sent periodic clips to Tom in case anyone got any bright ideas. Mostly, though, it was just me, the gulls, and Linda's wind chime. One afternoon, Martha, my neighbor, came by with a still warm loaf of bread. "I heard all about it," she said, setting it on my table. "You know how it is. Everyone at the market's talking. Some say you're too harsh. Some say, well, he was slow, but at least he woke up. I just wanted to tell you this. I wish my husband had been that harsh years ago before our youngest took the deed and marched it down to the bank as collateral for his wife's business." She gave a sad chuckle. "Now I'm renting a third-floor walk-up and climbing stairs every day. If he'd been willing to hurt some feelings earlier, we might still have our old porch to sit on, so don't let anybody tell you you're cruel for saving your own skin." That night I stayed on the dock longer than usual. The water reflected the smeared moon. I remembered the day Linda and I hung the first wind chime on that post. She laughed and said, "Give the wind something to play with, or it'll just beat our heads in." Maybe, I thought, boundaries are like that, especially when you're old. If you don't hang a wind chime, don't mark your lines, the wind just hits whatever it wants until something breaks. These days I hardly hear from Emma folks say she's furious, telling anyone who'll listen that I trusted strangers over blood, humiliated her husband in public, that I should have kept it in the family. Tyler's telling his own version back in the city, how his confused, declining father-in-law got manipulated by a lawyer out for fees. I can't control those stories. The only things I can control are this dock, this house, and how I live the rest of my time. I started going back to church more regularly, joined the seniors group. One day the pastor asked if I'd share my story at a workshop on financial abuse of the elderly. I hesitated, then said yes. If my mess can keep one other old man or woman from signing a stack of papers they don't understand, maybe it's worth being the difficult old guy. My dock looks the same as ever, weathered boards, dark posts, flaking paint. But there are a couple of new things. A second folding chair for when Martha comes over for tea, and a small wooden box I made to hold printed photos. Linda laughing, little Emma playing with our old dog on these same planks. I didn't make a dime from any sunset experience packages like Tyler dreamed about. Instead, sometimes I let neighborhood kids fish off the dock. I tell them not to run near the edge. I tell them about Linda, about the old boats, about the nights she and I sat in silence letting the wind blow through our arguments until they got small. One evening, I was picking up my teacup from the porch when my phone buzzed. A text from Emma, for the first time in weeks. I'm not ready to talk to you, she wrote. But I looked at some of the paperwork. I didn't know Tyler had gone that far. I thought he was just handling the business side for you. I need time. I sat down in my chair and read those lines over and over. Then I typed back, I need time too. The doc's still here. When you're ready to come sit a while, just you and me, no paperwork, no business. That seat will be waiting. I don't expect an answer soon. It might take months, years. Maybe it'll never come. But at least I've kept a place open where the two of us could sit, if we ever get brave enough to look each other in the eye. And so I live. Day by day, with the wind chime, the water, and one question that keeps floating through my mind, the question I finally wrote out and posted on a certain forum where people judge who's in the wrong. They call it AITA. I'm in my 70s, widowed, with a small dock on a bay. My son-in-law, an event planner, used a scanned copy of my signature, fake emails, and a broad power of attorney to file permits, transfer money, and buy insurance so he could turn my dock into an event space for his company. I met with a lawyer, set up an irrevocable trust, revoked the old POA, worked with the harbor master and harbor board to pull all permits, and cut off my daughter and son-in-law's access to my house and dock financially. As a result, my daughter has all but cut contact, saying I chose to publicly shame her husband instead of handling it privately. I protected my assets and my late wife's memory, but I may have lost my only child. So, am I the asshole for dragging all this into the light, creating a trust, and essentially closing the financial door on my daughter and son-in-law just to keep hold of this little strip of waterfront?